course, I like to play with ideas of originality and, what is a truly original idea? Is it writing a song that kind of sounds like someone else's song? So of course there's like that whole aspect and the copyright aspect. So I think there's a lot of different levels you can dissect it on, and I'm interested in all of that. But I want to present it in such a way where I don't have to. I never want to get on stage and be like, the copyright issues or this and that, and everyone needs to listen to me about this. I'm going to talk for 3 minutes right now about this. I'd rather them kind of explore that idea through hearing the music and just liking it and kind of then finding out about it kind of at their own pace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, KRUI might be able to speak a little bit about this too, but we were just, because I talked to him when I was writing the article for the Daily Iowan, and he was just explaining things to me about copyright and things like that, and we were just like, why haven't you been sued? Like, what? Like,
I don't know.
I mean, I actually, like, my documentary partner, Ben Franzen, we copyright criminals with, he was on a panel. I couldn't make it to South by Southwest this year, but there was actually a panel titled, "Why Hasn't Girl Talk Been Sued?"
Yeah, right. I got a bunch of text messages that morning. It's like, Greg, you should be down.
But I'm sure you're absolutely sick of talking about copyright.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's still interesting because that idea, especially because it could go many ways. Ideally, it would be a wonderful thing if everyone I sample was like, well, you know what, this is an interesting take on it, and you know what, it's not actually negatively hurting me in any way, and you know what, it might be increasing my listenership. So on that level, that would be cool, but I think there's a lot of politics involved. And
a lot of layers of managers and attorneys.
And I think the true answer is that my best guess would just be that people are afraid of setting a precedent. Mm-hmm. That if they were to sue and were to win, then it would be, because I think there's still this kind of dated view by a lot of people where it's like sampling or, doing collages, that's illegal. A lot of people it's just like that, it's black and white, but it's not. There's that idea of fair use, and I think a lot of people don't know about that. So I think certain record companies might fear the world hearing about fair use and then knowing about it, and everyone out there just rushing to make their own version of Night Ripper or their own thing on YouTube, which is already happening anyway. So, I mean, I feel like I feel like that culture is just, that kind of culture of borrowing pre-existing media and working with it and making something new out of it has just erupted in the past 5 years in a way that I don't think anyone could have ever predicted. And, I just think it's almost, there's no debating the fact at this point that, something that exists prior, recorded media, whether it's film, painting or whatever, can be used to make something new in such a way that it's not negatively impacting that at all. I don't even think there's a debate about that anymore, whereas it might have been a different story 20 or 30 years ago.
Well, because I just saw Mark Hosler from Negative Land last weekend. He said, say hi. He's a fan also. But he was talking about how, 20 years ago, his group was famously sued by U2, and he's been they were kind of like the canaries in the coal mine, this whole issue. But anyway, he was saying it used to be 20 years ago, he would have to kind of explain and justify to college audiences what he does, and he realized about 5 years ago, he stopped needing to do that because, and then I teach 18-year-olds, and I asked, in my freshman seminar class, how many of you ever made a mashup? And like a third of these Iowa kids raised their hands, which, would be incomprehensible 20 years ago, but it's like the way the technology has democratized access to music.
And I think a lot of the label people, too, are seeing that and knowing that, but also seeing the benefit of it, because there's always that weird little remix that happens to get 1 million hits on YouTube, and that spreads, whatever it was initially remixing, that spreads that initial message out to this whole wider audience. And, all of these major label artists, all you could ever hope for is a viral hit to kind of help spread your product, and a lot of times that viral hit comes from someone remixing it or someone reinterpreting, what already exists. So I think people can definitely benefit from it, and I think labels are, a lot of people in the major label world, at this point trying to embrace that rather than kind of swim upstream and, fight that world.
Yeah. Well, talking, about your mashups and things like that, I was just wondering if you had any, because whenever I listen to your music, it's like things just get like stuck in my head, and I was just wondering if you had any personal favorites of your own stuff that you like.
I think it's sometimes it's, I feel a certain way, and then I play a show and I might play it and it might be really dead to like what I thought was like the best idea ever, and it definitely influences the way I think about it. Not always entirely, it doesn't make me dislike that necessarily, but just, I mean, going back to the Night Ripper album, the one piece with, Nirvana drums from Scentless Apprentice and piano from Elton John and the verse from Notorious B.I.G., when I made that, I thought it sounded so smooth that it was almost like too much, because I like the stuff I do to have a certain, certain like, I don't want to say punkness, but rawness to it or something.
Kind of uncomfortable?
I just like the material to be like, oh, this guy made this by himself. This isn't an officially commissioned remix. I like that sound to it. Not necessarily mean it sounded bad. I just like that rawness. Mm-hmm. I thought it sounded so smooth. I was almost like, this might be just too like glossy for like the rest of the album or something. And I also thought people might be critical of that because it was glossy, thinking people would just be like, oh, that's too corny or whatever. But then I put it out there, and that was the moment people all like latched onto that, like, oh, this is the best part of the album. When I play live, it would get the best response. So that was kind of got me pumped, because that was just actually my favorite part, but I was a little hesitant to actually work with it. And to this day, it's one of the things I kind of play at a lot of the shows, and it's always kind of the signature moment, if there was to be one from my album. So, it's almost like the people who come out to the shows made that decision for me, that has become, kind of one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like your music seems to have, because it has such an audience involvement, such a crowd involvement, that it's like obviously you're the one who's recording it and making the ultimate decisions, but it's like kind of influenced pretty heavily by your fans and their response.
Definitely, very heavily. Yeah, it's weekly, and it's
It's like a focus group.
It's a very thorough focus group, like doing 150 shows and always getting that feedback. But yeah, it's funny though, because sometimes I feel like there's some material that maybe won't go over that well live, but I think on record people could grow into it. So sometimes I play stuff live and it will fall flat, and I'll be like, oh, well, that's going to be good on the album or whatever. But yeah, it is an interesting thing just to see how people react. And I'm getting older, and I'll play shows to a lot of like 14-year-olds coming out of shows. I'm like 28 at this point, so like I don't know if they've ever even heard of the Smashing Pumpkins. But that's like some old school band. So even then, it's like, does anyone know these songs? Whereas like I was doing this stuff when I was in college, and then it was like everyone I played to was exactly my age. So I was like, everyone knows everything I know, sort of thing. So now I'm always curious, just like what is obscure and what is known. I'm not, I live in a different world. I like still listen to the radio and buy CDs. And it's like old man out there.
Yeah. Well, what's in the future for Girl Talk?
I'm kind of winding up shows after like about 4 years of touring or something. But yeah, I haven't really stopped playing shows in a long time, and I think this summer, kind of starting June, July, I'm going to take 2 or 3 months off to try to work on the next record, which I never really did. I took 3 weeks off to do Feed the Animals, which I didn't finish in that time, but I kind of got it started. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this summer to just like go to the water park a lot and play basketball. and
hang out with the neighborhood kids.
I have like a backyard. I'm going to mow the grass once a week and like hang out with my dog and stuff like that. But yeah, so I'm excited to do the record. It just took me a long time to like decide if I even wanted to do one.
What's the point of making a record these days?
It's very like just because like I was saying, because I'm kind of old school in the way that I still love buying records and I do like believe in that art form where there isn't much of a point as much as it used to be. It's more of a personal thing. And the only reason I notice like sometimes a bootleg will go out from a show. And people will be like all over it. And people are always trying to find like recordings from the shows, and it's like, man, sometimes it's sloppy. Sometimes there's some like kid who's like bumping me off the computer, or sometimes there's some girl who just like kicked out the plug or whatever. So I'm like, I would rather have this be like the real finalized version. So, but I won't do a record unless I think I can take it somewhere that the last one didn't go. Because that's always what it is. The whole point has always been to try to just make an interesting collage record that may be on a level that maybe someone hasn't heard something like that before, to try to always innovate to some level. So I kind of have an idea of where this one will differ from the last one, but you never really know until you sit down and start making it. But I'm excited to try it out. But yeah, even if I sit down and it's not going there, then I just won't put it out. I just want to make sure it is something next level, or else I feel like you're just kind of messing with everyone who's going to your shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, just one last question. You kind of have a pretty big following, I think, all over the country, but here in Iowa City, you've played here 3 times in the last few years, and so just do you have any thoughts on Iowa City? Any memories from our town?
I ended my tour here in 2008, so that's always the day I remember the most because it was just a rowdy tour. I mean, back then I didn't have a tour manager, which sounds like ooh. But anymore, I've had one for a while, and it's like I drove that entire tour by myself and did merch myself or a friend, and it was me and Dan Deacon crammed in a car together, and it just was gnarly, and we would just show up late. So we were just so sloppy for the size of shows we were playing. The sort of venues we were playing at, we were the only people where we'd show up and be like, what? You have a Honda Accord and it's just you two idiots and that's 2 bands, what's going on here, you know? So that whole tour was nuts, and Iowa City was the last show, so we were kind of just man, it's over, let's have a good time. And that was the only show where I was just got in the midst for a Dan Deacon set and was so tired out by the end that I didn't know whether I could play just because I lost my mind during the show. And then the show was really good, and then we just wound up at some party downtown at some tall apartment sort of thing and just had a really crazy night, and everyone was really cool, and it was just a fun night. But that kind of stands out in my mind. And we just showed up at that show really late, and I don't even want to get into the details. It was just we were tired, but it gave us that last boost. It was kind of a really good going away party. And then it was nice today. Last year we were kind of in and out, but the campus looked wonderful today. Kind of wandering around from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're happy to have you again, and we're looking forward to the show tonight.